Hello, welcome to the first cycling podcast, Feminin, for YouTube. If you've never come across the podcast before, myself and Richard do a monthly chat about women's cycling, all the results, the news, the issues, etc. You can find the links below. Regular listeners will know exactly what we do, but we've decided this month to record it visually as well as in audio format, just for a bit of fun, and it's about time really. So do let us know below what you think. I'll stop pointing now. Let's go. Very rude to point. Let us know what you think. Enjoy.
Okay.
Normal service now.
Hello, my name's Richard Moore.
Start that again. Something made a funny noise.
Hello, my name's Richard Moore with Orla Chennaoui.
Hello.
Orla, last month we were in Marseille and on the top of the Col d'Ivoire, but we're back in the more familiar,
be careful.
more familiar surroundings.
We're in my garden, so don't do it down.
No, and we're doing a bold new experiment this month, aren't we?
We are. We're hopefully recording this for YouTube as well, just for something a bit different. I say hopefully because I'm in charge of the technology, and Richard, you can see what it looks like. It's two iPhones precariously plugged into an extension lead in my garden. So I'm hoping that it works. If it does, then you'll be able to find this episode on YouTube as well and let us know what you think. And if it doesn't work, just ignore me. Richard usually does.
I won't. I don't know. Well, what have we got coming out this month? What have we got in this month's show? We've got three distinct parts, as per usual.
Sorry, I'm looking at you funny because I thought you were throwing that to me, and I thought I wasn't paying attention when you told me what we were doing.
When we were planning stuff. It's got off to a bad start already, actually, because when you offered me a coffee, you asked if I wanted instant coffee.
No, I said, do you want an espresso or do you want powdered coffee? The reason being, I'm quite partial to powdered coffee. Because you can sneak an extra spoonful or two of coffee in there.
Disgusting coffee.
But you get an extra kick or three, so I quite
horrible,
like that.
Horrible.
Anyway, you got an espresso. Stop moaning. It's like a flat white.
Anyway, it's not. And it wasn't that hot either. But anyway, last month we were talking about La Course, obviously, and it was a sort of our sort of response and enthusiasm for La Course changed over the course of the episode. We'll no doubt talk about it again because it's a big talking point. We're hoping to get some more reaction to it at some point as well from certain high-profile riders, but keep that quiet for just now. But there has been some more racing since then. There was the RideLondon Classique the week after La Course, and then at weekend just past Crescent Vargarda in Sweden. The team time trial on the Friday, and then the road racing on the Sunday. Very unusual team time trial, but a nice little rehearsal for the World Championships coming up soon. Part two, we're going to do a little feature in part two on female Directeurs Sportif. So that follows the feature that we did in the Women's Tour episode a couple of months ago when you and I spent the day in team cars. You were with Kanye Schramm, I was with Team WNT, and a few listeners got in touch to ask whether there were many, if any, female sports directors working. So we tracked down a couple of them, and we'll hear from them. We'll also hear from a real pioneer, Robin Morton, who you interviewed, Orla. And in the final part, we'll hear from Molly Weaver, the British rider who rides for Team Sunweb, and she's had a torrid time with injury, terrible, life-threatening crash, and has battled back only to fall off again at La Course. So I interviewed her there. Hannah Troop had interviewed her earlier, and she was recovering. So packed as usual, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. The DS thing I think is going to be really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from the ones that you interviewed, because the UCI have started a scholarship scheme, haven't they? They started it last year to try to encourage women to go into that side of the sport. Full scholarship is paid. It's a once a year course. It's now obligatory for men's cycling. It's not obligatory if you want to be a DS in the women's side of it though. And I just find it really interesting as to why there are so few. And we'll talk about that when we come to it.
Don't ruin it all now.
I know. I don't
want
to peek too soon.
There's lots to say about that. What about the racing since La Course? Have you seen much of it? I think you watched RideLondon, didn't you?
So yeah, we had RideLondon Classique, as it should be pronounced, because they go with a French spelling, bizarrely. But
you could say the same about the cycling podcast.
Very true, but that was your That was your inspiration, yeah. Corin Rivera, the winner there, in a rainy, wet all day in London. We haven't had much luck with the weather, really, in London. But the biggest prize fund, of course, in women's cycling, €100,000, all up. Katie Archibald got one of the intermediate sprints and
has retired.
Yeah. Well, she's retired rich relatively for the women's peloton.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. €1,000 she got for an intermediate sprint, which is almost as much as you get for the entire 10-stage Giro Rossa winner, which just goes to show how much really needs to still be done in terms of prize funds. But it's great that RideLondon do offer parity with the men when it comes to.
Well, it's funny though, because Molly Weaver, who I mentioned earlier, is obviously Con Rivera's teammate. I bumped into her at Marseille airport. She was flying to Holland, I think, on her way to London, and she was riding RideLondon and really looking forward to it just for that reason alone.
For the money.
It was potentially a big payday. Well, it was a big payday in the end for them, obviously.
Yeah, €25,000 went to Corin Rivera, which will obviously be shared out among the rest of the team. And a brilliant second place as well for Lotta Lepisto. She did a fantastic manoeuvre on the final bend. If anybody watched it, you'll still be able to see it online. She gained a couple of places with a really bold move on the inside. It was fantastic racing. But Rivera, who again has had a wonderful season, said that she was just able to bide her time, really, that you can see the finish line from a long way out, so it's about patience and not panicking as much as anything else. Probably fair to say she was the only rider who had a decent lead out as well, which makes the world of difference. But brilliant win for Corin Rivera, and a fantastic second place for Lotta Lepisto, who we're going to be talking about as well when it comes to the Swedish races.
I like how you've positioned us here, Orla, in our little studio in the garden so that I'm looking into the sun.
In my defence, was sitting in that spot because of you and your dodgy hip. You wanted this spot that was the best supported.
All right.
So yeah.
Okay, so
can never win with you.
So actually, one race I forgot to mention at the start was the European Road Race Championship as well, which was recent, and I watched a bit of that. Marianne Vos won it. She's back. She struggled a bit in the course, but she's been coming back from the injury she suffered at the Women's Tour, of course, and she won that. And it's one of the only things she hasn't won. It's a pretty new title anyway. Anna van der Breggen wore the European Champions jersey for last year, so Marianne Vos is in that now. I think we'll get used to it, the European Champions jersey.
I hope so.
You're grimacing a bit.
Well, it's still not. I don't particularly like it as a design, really. I'm sure that doesn't take away from Marianne Vos's pride at wearing it.
Blue with yellow stars?
Yeah, it'd be much nicer. It just feels a little bit of a cheapo design.
It does look a bit cheapo,
doesn't
it?
Yeah. But Marianne Vos, delighted to be wearing it.
I'm sure she'll be happy. She'll be wearing it nonetheless.
I saw some of Cassino Viduma's Instagram stories, and she Instagrammed from, I think it was from Sweden, it must have been, with Marianne wearing the jersey and doing a little dance in the bus, and obviously delighted to have that added to her palmarès. Because we do tend to talk about Marianne these days more in terms of what she has achieved and hoping
fading force.
Well, I mean, it's cruel though. It's horrible, but
I only say that because we described that Andre Greipel on the cycling podcast as a fading force a few years ago, and cue an incredible resurgence. So having said
maybe
that,
doing her a favour.
She's going to have an incredible couple of seasons now. She's probably going to win the World Championship.
She could do.
She could do.
Yeah.
She looks very, very good. And she was second on Sunday as well in the World Cup race, the World Tour race in Sweden, Crescent Vargarda to Lotta Lepisto, who you mentioned earlier. But before that, there was a team time trial, which I said is a very unusual thing to have for trade teams. There are only two, that and the World Championship, which is coming up, of course, in Norway soon. So it was a good dress rehearsal for that. And we had a man there at the team time trial.
Our man on the ground.
Our man, Jonathan Rowe, who does lots of things for the podcast. He produces episodes. He runs our Friends scheme. He bullied us into recording this for YouTube. He does lots and lots of things. He also drives the Rafa mobile cafe around Europe, and he ended up in Sweden. So there he was with his recording device, and he spoke to some of the people there. I think we'll hear from Bob Varney, from Anna van der Breggen. Anna van der Breggen first. It sounds like they're walking alongside a horse. In fact, it's her cleated cycling shoes. Right. We can hear. And we hear from Hannah Barnes as well. So let's hear from them now.
Lovely. I mean, let me just check that this is still recording, because I heard an ominous boop at one stage. No, it's still going.
This is Van der Breggen.
Yeah.
Nowhere else a race as it's
You're the horse.
So this is for our team also important.
They're not her shoes.
See it as a race on its own, but also as a preparation for the Worlds, for the
Nay!
championships.
Nay, they're not her shoes.
An important day and an important time trial for
We just had a listen to Hannah Barnes, Anna van der Breggen and Bob Varney, and you can listen to their interviews on the full podcast. Again, link, wait for the point, coming below. Right, off we go again.
Back in the saddle. Okay, so we heard there from Anna van der Breggen, Hannah Barnes and Bob Varney. As Bob suggested, his team drops pretty new for them, and they were 16th on the day. I'm not sure. We're going to get Bob to join us in a future podcast, so maybe hear a bit more about that. It's such a technical event though, and Jonathan also spoke to Danny Stam, who we didn't hear from there. He runs the Bulls Domes team. He said they went out a couple of days before just for team time trial training. It is a discipline where practice doesn't make perfect, but it certainly makes you a lot better. It's highly, highly technical. The riders enjoy it. People, cycling fans, are kind of divided on team time trial, whether they enjoy it or not, but it has a place. And you know, that was, as I said, an interesting rehearsal for the World Championships. Bulls Domans were the winners, as they were at the Worlds last year.
And as they were at this event last year as well.
Indeed. Cervelo Bigla were second, Canyon Shram third. They swapped places at the Worlds last year. So Canyon Shram have an excellent record in this event, in their former guises as well. It was pretty close, 12 seconds just separating Cervelo Bigla and Bulls Domans. That's very good for Cervelo Bigla, I think.
Yeah, and as you say, dropped 16th out of 21. There were 21 teams in all of that. And I think it'll be quite a welcome win for Bulls Dolmans ahead of the World Championships. They were so dominant all throughout the season last year. And I actually just went through yesterday and had a little look at every win so far this season. And they are I suspected that they were down slightly, which they are. They had 17 World Tour wins at this stage last year, out of 36-ish, 11 this time round. So,
and most of them, I think, Anna van der Breggen, no? I mean, last year, the wins were spread throughout the team, whereas this year, I think the majority of those wins will have gone to Anna van der Breggen.
Yeah, and she stays in the purple jersey, of course, for the World Tour leader.
She's just joined the team, so she wasn't there last year. So you have to look at the riders, Megan Garnier especially. Lizzie Deignan has ridden pretty well, but the highlight of her season probably winning in Yorkshire, I think. She's obviously in pretty good form. She looked very good at La Course. Maybe the Worlds will fall her way again.
Yeah, they could well do. And I think that to an extent, it's to be welcomed really for non-Bulls Dolmans riders and staff and fans that there is a little bit more of an even spread for the wins this year. And it does, I think, point to maybe a raising of the game elsewhere. I mean, the likes of the riders that we're talking about, Corin Rivera, for example, has just been fantastic for Sunweb. Cashinova Doma, Lotte Lepista as well, with a few podiums.
Transfer news, joining Canyon Shram next year, Cashinova Doma.
Yes, indeed. But I think that it just feels like there is there's more dynamism to the racing, and the results certainly this year compared to last year. It felt a little bit inevitable for certain races that Bulls Dolmans would win it with any one of a number of riders. As you say, this year, Anna van der Breggen, the outstanding standout winner for that team. But yeah, so that'll be welcome for them, and in such a technical discipline as the team time trial, that's surely going to bode well going into the World Championships.
And the road race on Sunday, Crescent Vargarda road race.
You know, you didn't change your pronunciation, you just lowered your voice.
Well, I was inspired by Jonathan. I heard him pronounce it. I thought he did a pretty good job. Lotte Lepisto was the winner in that very stylish Finnish national road race champion jersey. Cool name as well, isn't it, Lotte Lepisto?
Yeah, we like that. Yeah. You say you struggle with her name though. It's really easy.
Yeah, no, I don't struggle with it in that sense. I struggle to remember what order the vowels go in. There's a lot of vowels to think about. But I'm there now.
I'm trying to count the vowels now. There aren't that many.
There are quite a few.
5 between...
Anyway, I was going to say about the race. It was an interesting race. We'll hear in part 2 from one of the DSs we speak to about the difference between men's and women's racing. In men's racing, always following a similar pattern of a break going and being gradually reeled in, and how we don't always necessarily see that in women's racing, but in that race we saw a big break, 11 riders and most of the top teams represented, which and then have it chased back, which doesn't always happen. Sometimes when all the teams are represented like that, it actually sticks. It was brought back because there were a couple of teams missing, and it was an interesting race tactically because there were a lot of strong riders up there, including Alexis Ryan, our diarist from Tour of California, and it was quite an interesting race. It's beautiful countryside. I mean, the landscape is spectacular there. It could be a more challenging finish, I think. You've got the gravel road sections and things like that as well. The last couple of years, this year especially, it's come down to a pretty big bunch sprint. There were about 35 odd riders there, and so it was a pretty big bunch sprint in the end. But yeah, a great race to watch. Scenery, as I said, absolutely majestic.
And a great win for... Now I'm
Come
struggling.
on.
Le Pisto. I actually confused between the O and the A. Anyway, she came second last year, and she's had injury this season, so she missed quite a decent chunk after the Spring Classics. Did really well in the spring, 2 podiums, I think it was. So a good return to form for her. You said the gravel section you found a little bit underwhelming, though, did you?
Yeah, much was made of the gravel sections, and I struggled to really notice when they were on the gravel section. It wasn't exactly Paris-Roubaix, but I mean, it's nice to see the race going off the beaten track, as it were. I mean, we love that at Strade Bianche. There's rumours of Tour de France next year going off road up in Brittany, perhaps. Dirt roads, dust roads. Fantastic. I think we want more of that.
Yeah, and it does lead to different style of racing as well, I guess. The last couple of years this race has been won and by the breakaway. It's managed to stick and stay away. So this year the fact that we had a bit more of a sprint finish means that they can mix it up a little bit. And to go back as well to the point I made about there being ever increasing professionalism, I guess, in the women's peloton. At the end of the race, Le Pisto had said how last year when she came second, she was kind of on her knees really because she'd spent the entire race in the breakaway. And this year she was protected for the entire race. So she didn't really, she said, have to do much of an effort, make much of an effort throughout the race. She was able to save her legs for the sprint. So great team tactics there by Cervelo Biga.
They were. Ashley Moore and Passio actually was very active up the climb. Not far from the finish, we saw Lizzie Dagnan have a go there as well. I spent the day with the Cervelo Biga team a month or so ago in London with their director Thomas Campagna, who's quite a character, and Ashley Moorman was there, and several of the other riders, Cecilie Utrup Ludwig, I believe her name is.
Very good.
It's a very difficult name to pronounce that one. She's the leading, or she was, I'm not sure if she still is, the leading under 23 rider in the Women's World Tour, and a great talent. We'll maybe hear some of those interviews in a future episode. Got her name
right. Well done! Can almost see the cogs working there.
I'm just, right, so I need to get these names right. I'm fucking struggling with names.
Age, Richard.
Thank you very much indeed to Science and Sport, who sponsor the cycling podcast Feminin, as indeed they do the cycling podcast. Very grateful indeed to them. And there is a discount available for podcast listeners or podcast viewers now. If you go to scienceandsport.com, at the checkout, enter the discount code CPAUG20. That's CPAUG20. You will get a whole 20% off all your Science and Sport products, which is well worth doing. So, Orla, I mentioned that after the feature that we did a couple of months ago at the Women's Tour, I was with Graham Hurd. You were with Barry Austin, weren't you, from Canyon SRAM? Yeah. Graham Hurd is the sports director at WNT Racing. And a few listeners got in touch to ask the reasonable question of whether there are any female sports directors working in women's racing. And the answer is there are, but not that many. Not that many.
Not that many as DSs, and I'm struggling to think. Not that many through the sport as a whole.
Well, there's one that I know of only who works in men's cycling as well, Rachel Heel. We'll hear from her. We'll hear from her. God, I'm struggling to just speak today.
It's always an occupational hazard.
There we go. Must have been that coffee that gave me. That subpar coffee hasn't quite got my engine revving.
You needed the extra scoop, you see, of Nescafe.
Obviously I did. Anyway, we'll hear from her. There's a bit of a tongue twister that though, isn't it?
What? We'll hear from her.
Rachel Hill, we'll hear from her.
Not really, no. It's not really up there with Peter Piper, is it?
No. Lotta La Pista. Anyway, we'll hear from her. We'll hear from Donna Ray Zielinski, who works for Wiggle High Five. And we'll also hear a little bit from Robin Morton, who is a real pioneer, because she worked for a men's team in Italy, American Women. Quite a strange story about how that came about. We'll hear more from her in a future episode.
She didn't just work for them, she co-owned the team. And that was back in the early 1980s. She was a total trailblazer. Brilliant to chat to her about what that was like back in the day. And I do find it still fairly curious that there are so few women in either side of the sport. In men's cycling, certainly, which, you know, this is a women's cycling podcast, but we're talking about women in the sport in general. I'm certainly very aware of being a woman even now when I go to races. There are much more of us than there used to be, but it's still an environment that is very dominated by men. And when we listen to Robin chatting about the Giro, not necessarily right now, but the Giro in particular is a race that is just so macho. It's just from another era. I mean, when I've covered it from start to finish, I remember there's this one fellow journalist, an Italian journalist, who used to sniff the air behind me when I walked through the press pen. I mean, it's that kind of very bizarre sort of the face you're pulling right now, Richard, is very disconcerting. But it's still an environment whereby you're very conscious of being a woman. And like I say, less so in the women's side of the sport, but it is straight. You've got me.
I can't get...
That was maybe not the best anecdote. Anyway, now I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, so there are still so few, even in the women's side of it, and it is curious as to why.
Well, it isn't, I think, and Donna.
Well, I was trying to explain why there were so few, because it's still a very much male environment.
When you think about it, Donna Ray Zielinski said this, that there are more ex-professional male riders looking for jobs in cycling, and I think that's why a lot of them end up in women's cycling. Not end up in women's cycling, but you go to the women's racing and the team cars are generally full of men rather than women. She said practically as well, you know, a lot of women at the age where they might become sports directors are becoming mothers, and it's a very difficult thing to combine. One that she did herself successfully because she wanted to. Well, we'll hear her talk about that. But there are practical reasons, I think, why there are far fewer females working in that particular job than men. But there's no reason at all, you know, from a skills point of view, why they couldn't. And one of the sports directors I spoke to thought that actually the breakthrough would come in men's cycling, that he could imagine there being more women working as sports directors in men's cycling than in women's cycling, which is perhaps counterintuitive, but why not?
Yeah, and the UCI is doing its bit to try to encourage the change. They are offering full scholarships. They have done for the last 2 years now. This is the second year, to any women who want to undertake their DS courses in Eglen, Switzerland. I think it's just a couple of days at the end of November. And the courses are now obligatory if you want to be a DS in the men's side of the sport, but not yet in the women's, which I think would be probably quite welcome if that were to change, that there was that level of professionalism as well in the women's side of the sport. But they are doing their bit to try to encourage at least women to enter into it.
Well, Donna Ray Zielinski and Rachel Hill both did that course last year. Donna is actually running the course this year. I asked her why there was a separate course for DSs working women's cycling, we should say, rather than for female DSs, and she said, well, the rules are different between men's and women's racing, so that makes sense. But should we hear a little bit from Robin Morton, the trailblazer we mentioned? As I said, we will hear the full interview in a future episode, perhaps themed on trailblazers and pioneers, but here's a little bit from her about what she thinks about the situation now.
And can we keep a little snippet of one of her little stories as well to sort of tease ahead? So maybe the genitalia-shaped vegetables.
Will, if you're listening. Yeah, just a little thing about the maybe the coffee car with Vignon and Mozart.
Yeah.
So that was Robin Morton, and we will hear the full interview because we were going to include it in this episode, but I just felt that there was so much detail there. It's such a great story, and there are great stories from that period in particular in the 80s where it was a weird there was a weird moment where on the one hand women's cycling was developing quite quickly. Then that development then slowed down again, but in the 80s it seemed to be, with Jenny Longo, Maria Cannons, and the Tour de France Feminin coming along, it seemed there seemed to be quite a lot happening on the women's side of the sport, but then that slowed down. But for women in the men's side of the sport, it was still very, very difficult, and there were one or two people who came and worked in it, Robin Morton being one, Shelley Versus being another at 7-Eleven, who encountered serious hurdles. And it's fascinating. It sounds like, well, I was going to say it sounds like stories from another century. It is another century, but it's staggering how different the environment was. That you're saying it's bad now, Orla, but it was a different age.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say it's bad now. I think to positivity or negativity is a bit irrelevant, really.
Well, you're a very
but
positive
it's still
person, aren't you?
I'm a very positive
nature.
person. Yeah. But glass half full. But it's still very stark, I would say. And I do think it's sad that Robin didn't end up being the trailblazer, I guess, that she could have been. Nothing to do with her, but more the women who came behind, that they didn't see that then as something that they could do. And maybe it just would have taken such a cultural shift that we probably are kind of maybe in the middle of, maybe not even. I mean, for me personally, I was thinking to myself, whenever I heard about the scholarships, I'm always thinking, what else can I do with my life? And I thought, maybe I could apply to be a DS, why not? And then I thought, could I really work in an environment that is so male, if it was to go into the male side of it? With the women's side of it, I think it's much more friendly in that sense, but it's still a long way off, I think.
How about your driving skills?
Have I not mentioned that I'm a fully qualified racing driver, Richard?
I forgot about that. And but you're not allowed to use your phone.
Well, you're allowed to.
Actually, you are.
You're allowed to. Well, exactly. You're allowed to. Hang on. So, as a DS, you're not only allowed to use your phone, but it's expected. You can kind of get away with watching TV as well. You're allowed to chat to everybody around you.
I'm not sure if all these things are technically actually allowed.
No, so maybe I wouldn't get onto the course. But it helps if you're able to do everything while driving at the same time. So I'm a perfect candidate.
Anyway, you mentioned that Robin Morton wasn't a trailblazer, but she was in a sense, and somebody that she mentioned was Rachel Heel. Let's hear from her now. She is a sports director for United Healthcare in the US. They've got a men's and a women's team. She works for both, mainly with the women's team, but also for the men's team. She's worked at Milan San Remo with the men's team, and interesting story. Let's hear from Rachel Heel. Then we'll hear from Donna Ray Zielinski, who is a sports director for Wiggle High Five.
And once again, if you want to hear those interviews, our
fantastic
little edited,
interviews.
Yeah, really good. Click on the link below.
So we heard there from Rachel Heel and Donna Ray Zielinski, both sports directors. Rachel for United Healthcare and Donna for Wiggle High Five. And there are others. I mean, Beth Jurea at Kanya Shram is involved on the sort of organisational side of the team, but also acts as a sports director at times as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted that struck me actually when listening to those interviews was that and we often hear it from women, when they said that they'd like to see more women doing the role of DS, but on merit, so that it wasn't just for their gender. And what strikes me every time is I have never heard a man say, I would like to be chosen on merit rather than my gender. And I always think that...
But it's not so much an issue, is it?
No, I know. But so the thing is, we don't really actually mean on merit. What we tend to mean by that is that the woman has to be at least ever so slightly better than the man to kind of compensate for the fact that she's a woman. I think we need to stop saying that it's on merit and just assume that's the case.
Well, yeah, we should. Yeah, I don't think we look at a woman in a team car and wonder whether she's there on merit or not. You assume that she is.
Do we though?
I don't think so. No, do we? No.
I think we kind of do, and I think I'm probably tying myself up in knots now. But I think we should assume that they're there on merit, and we do. And what I mean is that we need to just stop saying that, and then that way that women stop limiting themselves when it comes to putting themselves forward.
We are tying ourselves in knots. Yeah. But I asked both Donna and Rachel whether there was a difference between men's and women's racing, and Donna said no, and Rachel said yes. And I guess the other question is there a difference between male and female bike riders? And on the one hand, they are all bike riders, but I often wondered at British Cycling, for example. British Cycling obviously have a male and female program, lots of male and female riders, but in the coaching staff, no females at all. I don't think there's ever been a female on the coaching staff of British Cycling. There may be now, actually, but certainly over the sort of period of success they've had, there haven't been any female coach. And I have sometimes wondered whether a female coach might be a better coach to a female athlete.
I think sometimes it can be a better coach to a female athlete and a male athlete, and sometimes you need the male perspective. And I think the point is that they are all bike racers, but we are different. We're very different as genders. I think we have different set outlooks on things and different approaches to things, good and bad. And I think that to make a balanced world, to make a balanced peloton, to make a balanced team and a balanced rider, you need input from both, really. So it's not whether the female touch is better than the male, it's having both of those together, because sometimes a woman's approach will work in a certain circumstance and sometimes a man's approach will work in a certain circumstance. And obviously then every woman is different and every man is different. We're being massively generalistic, but I think you need a bit of both, really.
Can you pass me the t-shirt?
Of course. Feels like a moment.
It's all that.
Oh, let me see. Let's show. Look at that. This is cool. I've never seen this before. So this is inside our Peddler de Charme t-shirt. Oh, Richard's care and attention at unwrapping the t-shirt is a bit pointless now.
Why?
But because I'm just man-handling it. Woman-handling it. So let me just see if you can see that. Peddler de Charme. Hugo Coblet was renowned as much for his riding prowess as Cobley. Yep. There speaks the polyglot. Hugo Coblet was renowned as much for his riding prowess as his immaculate appearance. The Swiss rider's jerseys had special pockets sewn in to fit a comb, a bottle of eau de cologne and a sponge. He suffered with and bested the greats of his day, but was just as quick to hide the evidence of hardship before blowing kisses to fans and greeting the press. The Cycling Podcast awards the title Peddler de Charme, along with this t-shirt, to riders who embody Coblet's spirit. Coblet spirit. How do we truly define an act of charming peddling? You'll know when you see it.
Oh, nice.
Coblet is my kind of dude.
Hugo
I love
Coblet.
it.
Yeah.
Should it not be Hugo? Hugo Coblet.
Swiss.
Yeah, but it could be
Killed
French,
himself
German, or Italian.
driving into a tree.
Oh God! Bring the tone down. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed to Rafa, our main sponsor. They are fantastic backers for us and the Cycling Podcast. And we've been joined on the sofa by a t-shirt, the Peddler de Charme t-shirt. This is the range of part of the range of clothing that they launched just before the Tour de France. Rafa, designed and made by Rafa. They are launching. Sorry, Orla, you were going to say something.
I was just going to praise Rafa for finally making a t-shirt that looks like it would fit a professional cyclist, because for a few years you boys were handing out tents, basically, which were lovely novelty items.
Handing out t-shirts.
You were handing out pride.
Made for normal people.
Yes, but these are clearly made for cyclists.
Yeah.
With their little cologne bottles, the comb.
You get them in my size as well, which is nice. Anyway, this is a Peddler de Charme t-shirt that we've got here. They are selling very fast and they are making more. But
yes, you can buy them.
They're launching a new range of t-shirts for women and I think jerseys as well. Peddlers de Charme with a slightly new design, tweaked for the females. So
I hesitate. I dread
female sizes
to
as well.
ask what symbols are on the Pédaleuse de Charme. We've got an eau de cologne, we've got a comb and a sponge.
Wait and see.
We don't have lipstick and heels, do we?
No. Anyway, they'll be available soon. Stay tuned to find out when they'll be for sale. The gear that is for sale is at rafa.cc or through our website, thecyclingpodcast.com. If you click on shop, it'll take you to the Rafa Cycling Podcast clothing. So do go and have a look. And as I say, the Pédaleuse de Charme stuff will be available soon. It's being made as we speak. Well, it's being designed and then made. So yeah, you can have a look at that. In this final part, Orla, we are going to hear from Molly Weaver, a young British rider who has had terrible misfortune, but through it all has kept smiling amazingly. Hannah Troop interviewed her a few months ago, just when she was recovering from her terrible smash with a car, which left her with numerous horrific injuries. We'll hear the whole sort of catalogue of them in this interview. But it was amazing listening to her, just how optimistic and upbeat she sounded, despite all that, and at a time when it wasn't even clear that she'd be able to come back. So let's hear from her, and then I caught up with her at La Course. She had suffered another nasty crash on the first stage of La Course, but she was still pretty happy with it all.
I was going to say, because we were waiting at the top of the Col d'Izoard for Molly to arrive. We'd done our interviews with winners, also rans and notable extras, and we were waiting for Molly to get up there because you wanted to catch up with her following Hannah's interview to see how she was getting back to racing. And then we hear that she's crashed again, and my heart just broke for her.
It was a nasty one. I remember seeing the rider on the road, not realising it was her. It was a nasty crash, so she was quite badly bashed up. But anyway, let's hear from her before and after, as it were. Here she is talking to Hannah Troop and then to me in Marseille. So that was a rather remarkable story of Molly Weaver, her awful crash and recovery and comeback and setback at La Course. But she's back, and as I said earlier, I met her at Marseille Airport flying out after La Course, and she was there with some teammates, and just I think enjoying being back and looking forward, as I said, to RideLondon Classique and the prize purse that was on offer there, which she won with Corinne Rivera obviously winning there, and she's part of a great team. She mentioned that we talked a little bit about how integrated the two men's and women's teams are at Sunweb, perhaps more so than any other team, and it was really nice to see that, of course, just the coming and going of the male and female riders, and we see it on social media as well, the men and women supporting each other, which is nice, and they're a great example, I think, Sunweb. And in terms of results as well, I mean, what a season they're having. Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to work, whatever they're doing across the team. And I always look at happy teams who are successful teams and you wonder, it's a bit chicken and egg, really. But Sunweb seem to have it right. Obviously, winning helps an awful lot with that. But I really do think that, you say example, I think they've absolutely set the example of how we could, I hesitate to say should, but certainly how we could see a sponsor integrating the male and female teams and doing it with such a wonderful parity and not just giving lip service to that, but the riders themselves, they treat each other as colleagues. That's how it looks from the outside anyway, and if it's not conducive to success, in the sense that maybe that's not what's creating it, it certainly doesn't harm in any way whatsoever, and I think that's great.
And as you said, it just happens through going on training camps together, things like that.
It's not rocket science.
They know each other. Yeah, no, absolutely. A little update on another crash victim. Claudia Peretti was involved in a terrible crash at the Giro Rosa and was in a coma for a while. I don't know if we know how she's going to recover, but she's certainly out of the coma and she's returned home to Brescia, where she will continue her slow recovery, and we'll await updates on her condition. But the news is at least more positive than it was a few weeks ago, so that's good. Best of luck to her. Yeah. So that's all for this month, I think, Orla. We've got lots to come up. I mentioned Robin Morton interview. We've got other longer interviews to play in future months. We want to be joined by a few guests as well. We've got a few people in mind, haven't we?
We do indeed.
We do indeed. Anyway, that's all for this month. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard. That is the cycling podcast Feminin done and dusted for YouTube. Have you enjoyed your first on-camera experience,
No.
Richard? Oh, please. You love it, really?
I don't.
No?
No.
Right, well.
It's more your thing, that. I'm...
Well, we're
face for radio.
We're having fun, aren't we? We're trying it out for fun.
Sure.
Let us know what you think, because I would quite like to make Richard suffer a little bit more. So if you like it, we'll do it again. Yeah? Promise?
Sure.
Such enthusiasm.